Let's talk about it. Let's go deep. We all have something to share. KnolShare with Dr. Dave.
What is the importance of belonging? And why do we all need to belong somewhere? It is built into our human nature. Learn how the powerful philosophy of Ubuntu helps to deliver a simple roadmap to building positive teams and relationships, improving engagement and performance. Get your copy of Belonging and Healing, Creating Awesomeness for Yourself and Others by Dr. Dave Cornelius on Amazon.com. Hey, welcome to the KnolShare with Dr. Dave podcast. I am Dr. Dave Cornelius, your host. As we continue with the Resiliently You podcast series, my guest today is Lisa Jones. Lisa is a multi-award-winning, science-driven, fact-based therapist, coach, and passionate trainer who believes that prevention is better than intervention. Lisa works in both the corporate and education sector, teaching others the importance of brain health, resilience, stress management, and emotional well-being, as well as running a business private practice, a busy, I would say, private practice. So, Lisa, welcome to the KnolShare with Dr. Dave podcast. So do us a favor and provide us with an elevator pitch about your journey as a mental health consultant, psychotherapist, coach, and trainer.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here. And when I was thinking, I had to try and keep this brief. I'm terrible for kind of going off on tangents. So basically, my journey really kind of growing up, I was always interested in people, and I found I was always that person that people came to advice or want them to be the voice for them if they felt they were unable to speak up about things. So I've always had kind of quite a sense of justice, and wanting to help people. Now, my first love was actually performing arts, but unfortunately I became quite unwell in my teens and kind of struggled with various chronic illnesses. So knowing that I wasn't able to pursue my musical theatre dreams, I decided to do my degree in counselling and psychotherapy. So that's kind of where it all started. And over the years, I was able to fully recover from my health issues just before I was 30, so a little while ago. And that kind of happened really after a lot of work, a lot of investing in various therapies really, and really understanding the brain mind body connection. So that was the kind of the key moment for me where I thought there's something here and I really want to help other people with this. So kind of got the passion really even more so, and wanting to help people understand how we can manage stress, how we can build resilience and do all of those things. So over the years, I trained in various other modalities, including coaching, NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming for people who aren't aware, and applied neuroscience. My passion is the brain. That's why I talk a lot about brain health. And kind of as time went on, I was working in my private practice and that was getting busier, but I wanted to help more people. So that's why I set up Headstrong Training as a vehicle to be able to do that. And as you said in the intro, I'm really passionate about teaching prevention over intervention. So that's kind of my journey, really. And now I work with senior leaders in both businesses and schools to kind of teach those essential life skills, really, so people feel confident to manage those stresses in life.
That's beautiful. And I noticed that in the introduction, we talked about resilience. Yes. As one of the things that you try to tease out of people or bring out of individuals. So how would you define resilience?
So for me, in fact, I've kind of taken this quote really. There's a lady called Dr. Carol Pemberton who's done amazing research in resilience, and kind of really it encompasses the capacity to remain flexible in our thoughts, feelings, and behaviours, really, so that we're able to kind of emerge stronger and hopefully more wiser, or wiser, I should say, from difficulty, challenge, and adversity. So it's having that flexibility overall, I think.
Man, that's so succinct. Right to the point, right? So let's talk about why is resilience an important skill to cultivate in a world that is filled with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and which we call VUCA. Why is that so important?
So that's such a good question. I suppose from my perspective, without resilience, we're really susceptible to chronic stress and the health implications that come with that. So whether that's neurologically, mentally, emotionally, physically, or even spiritually, when we don't have the resilience within us, really, that whether we've learned it or not, that can have some really quite negative consequences for the rest of our life, and it's by learning and developing that resilience that we're able to face challenges and come through them. And, the reality is that, life is hard at times. It's not always easy, and the world can be really tough. It can be brutal. And there are so many things outside of our control that really the more resilient we are and the more able we are, the more likely we're going to be able to thrive and to grow and to adapt and to keep on evolving in the best way that we can.
So I'm just going to shift the spotlight to you and ask, what makes you resilient?
What makes me resilient? I think, honestly, it's my overall outlook on life. So whilst I know, as an individual person, as a therapist, as a trainer, etc., it's not possible to be positive all the time. And I think we need to find that balance between, having a positive mindset and a positive outlook, but not falling into what we call toxic positivity, where it's that, we'll just think positive and just be grateful and, always look on the bright side. And that's very helpful. But it's not possible to do that all the time. And we do need to acknowledge the hardship. We need to acknowledge the challenge. We need to acknowledge the feelings that we're having to be able to move through difficult situations. So, I suppose as well, I have a core belief, really, that everything will work out and everything will work out as it should. So it's, thinking that just by the fact that I'm sat here, there isn't anything that I haven't been able to overcome. And has it always been easy? No, it absolutely hasn't. But, have found ways to overcome things by being more resilient. So for me, I think what makes me resilient is maintaining a hopeful outlook, always being grateful, always, no matter how difficult life is, there is always something that I can be thankful for. And being adaptable, logical and rational, as well as really importantly, knowing when to ask for help, knowing when to take a step back, when to take a break. I think they're the things that make me, and I've had to learn that. I'm not saying that's easy, I have learned that throughout my life. But I think that's what makes me resilient.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you kind of made a comment about, toxic happiness or, I've never heard that before. That's very interesting. What was the term that you used? Toxic
positivity.
Toxic positivity. Good. I'll keep that in mind. That's such a good thing. So when we talk about poor resilience, how does poor resilience limit a person's sense of belonging? Because it's such an important thing in the world that we live in today, where we're all just trying to be heard, be seen, be valued.
Absolutely. And it's a tough question. It's a great question. It's a tough one. And I think, because as you've just touched on, as humans, we are designed to be socially connected. Next to sleep, actually, social connection is the most important aspect of brain health and well-being and resilience. And as you've just said, we all, as humans, we all have a need to be accepted, to be seen, to be heard and valued, and to fit in. We all want to be part of a community. So if someone's lacking in resilience, it can be very easy to feel victimized. Or to fall into the blame culture, effectively isolating ourselves. We can get very insular, which can be really damaging. And I suppose another key component of resilience is having that secure attachment, so which is slightly different to the social connection. But, whether that's one person or whether it's the whole community, but having those secure attachments, and not having that, not having the community, not having social connection actually lowers our resiliency.
That could be understood. So I know you work with organizations and schools. So, think about some tangible benefits gained by organizations. If their employees have a sense of belonging, what is that like?
Crikey. It makes such a difference in the workplace. People talk about toxic cultures at work, toxic workplaces, etc. But when people, have that sense of belonging, it has huge benefits, not just for the individual, but for the teams, the wider organization, because when people feel like they are part of something, they are part of that team, they're part of that culture, and they feel valued, it's ultimately only going to have a positive effect, because it increases feelings of loyalty, it increases employee engagement, as well as productivity, innovation, creativity, all of these amazing things. Because really, when people have that sense of belonging, it allows for more trust. When there's trust there, more ideas can be shared, more things can be achieved, really.
Yeah, most certainly. That has been my experience. So if you could share an experience that you had when belonging increased a person's or group resiliency, because as you said, this is a core need that we have as a human being. And so what have you seen out there?
So I suppose I can think of a couple, if it's okay to share a couple of examples kind of from private practice and from the organizational work that I do. So thinking about my private practice, of course, one of the key components of that is that therapeutic relationship. So that's a key factor in helping people build their resilience. And so just thinking of an example with one particular client I worked with, where we built up that relationship, obviously they're working on themselves, building their resilience. And of course, that empowers them to then make different decisions and also to build their sense of self-worth. And when people have that feeling, of course, that's going to impact their working environment. It's going to help them feel more confident at work. And the other example I was thinking of was working in a group of people in a business. I was kind of going in to deliver training and run focus groups and things. And there was some real discord amongst the team. And 9 times out of 10, when I see this, it's because of a miscommunication, a misunderstanding. People just perhaps aren't on the same page. But by delivering the training and support to them and giving them a space, a safe space to communicate, where they all felt able to have a voice and be heard, they had that ability to be able to share how they were feeling. What that did was create an environment where they were able to resolve any underlying issues. And of course, that then developed their connection amongst them as a team and their trust, meaning that they grew stronger and more resilient as individuals and as a team. And of course, that then has the wider impact across the organization.
Yeah, I just picked up on a key word that, you kind of mentioned is like almost psychological safety, which gives us the ability to feel that it's okay for us to share without worrying about someone jumping down our throats or on our necks, either which way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important aspect, especially when it comes to resilience in the workplace. And I think a lot of organizations now are really understanding that, and they're taking psychological safety much more seriously, because I think people are starting to finally realize, oh, actually, when that's in place, it creates a much healthier and happier working environment.
Yes, for sure. Right. And not to mention the amount of innovation opportunities that we may miss out when someone is quietly sitting in a corner and they take off and go do it on their own, right? Because they did not feel encouraged in their current workspace.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what words of encouragement would you like to gift the listeners with today as we bring our conversation to a close?
I think really it's to remind people that they can do hard things. As humans, we can do hard things. We can learn resilience. We can develop resilience. And like I said earlier, the fact that I'm sat here, I know there's nothing I haven't overcome. And that's true for everyone. We can overcome things, even though in the midst of it, it might feel impossible. There is a way forward. And it's not always easy, and that's okay. Life isn't meant to always be easy. We wouldn't develop resilience if everything was easy. That's how we learn, through challenge. And I suppose just to remind people that we're all only human, which means, none of us are perfect. None of us have it all together, and all of us need help sometimes, and that's absolutely okay. And we're a constant work in progress. I think one of my favorite sayings is that all any of us can do is the best we can with the resources we have available at that time. So just to remind people that, maintain that hopeful outlook. If things are difficult, there is a way through it, and things do work out.
So if we had to think about the difference, the opposite of toxic, happiness, I don't know why why the word is evading me, but toxic positivity. What's the flip side of that?
Oh, crikey, that's a good question. I suppose, do you mean as in what would be the more?
Well, you have toxic positivity. What would be a positive word to replace toxic with?
Oh. Realistic positivity.
Well, and that's okay, right? It's okay to have that. that
Yeah,
context, realistic
absolutely.
positivity as opposed to
Yes.
toxic positivity. I'll keep that in mind. So I know recently, as you live in UK,
Yes.
you had you could see, as we were looking at on television from the United States,
Mhm.
we're looking at so many people who are sensing, a level of belonging. It was really remarkable to see. Walk us through that journey. Because to me that's a unique experience, because most of my listeners may live in the United States and elsewhere, but the fact that you were there having that experience with the passing of your
Mm,
monarchy or queen,
mm, mm,
yeah, after 70 plus years,
mm,
I see so many sense of belonging that was happening.
mhm.
Give us some like firsthand context about that.
Gosh, it's been a really interesting time, and for many reasons. For I think for all of us here in the UK, whether they are royalist or not, whether they agree with the monarchy or they don't, however they feel about it, the fact is that the Queen for us has been that stable, constant presence for pretty much everyone I know, apart from my granny, who's 100, throughout our entire lifetimes. So it's even she has been there, and she has been, excuse me, uh, a leader. She has served, whether she wanted to or not. She can't help the fact she was born into that role. She has done what she promised that she would do. She has literally dedicated her entire life to her job effectively. And when she passed, I think the nation, and I'm generalizing here because of course this isn't every single person, of course it's not, but felt that, really felt that loss, because she was no longer there, and it's all we've ever known. And of course, naturally, when somebody dies, it brings up our own memories, it brings up our own thoughts and feelings of our own personal experiences. So whether that's losing a parent or a loved one, we can't help but then think about our own experiences, which of course can be really difficult for people. I think the majority of people I've spoken to have all said, myself included, to be honest, that we felt far more emotional than we expected to when it happened. And I think people have this kind of shared experience of, okay, this is actually really quite difficult. It's bringing up a lot of emotions, like I say, for lots of different reasons. And I think something that, if it's okay to say, I think something that the Brits do very well is that kind of real camaraderie, and people, will pull together. And and crikey, seeing some of the images, as I'm sure you have probably seen, of the queues of tens of thousands of people all wanting to go and pay their respects, and not necessarily because she was the Queen or it's the monarchy, but just respects to this woman who's dedicated her life to her service. And I think we all are also acutely aware that, take all of that away, she was a great grandmother, she was a grandmother, a mother, she has a family. And whilst the majority of us have no concept of what that's like to be a part of that family, and like I say, whether we agree with it or not, on a human level, she was a woman who had a family, and has faced many challenges. So I think it's been an interesting time. And of course, managing, because everyone's entitled to their opinion and everyone has their own views, of course they do, based on their own experience. And there's been a lot of I'm going to use the word hate, but which is a very strong word to use, but understandably so. And I find it fascinating in my role, because of course my job as a therapist is to be impartial, is to not pass judgment, is to simply meet people where they are and hear what they have to say. So it's been really interesting from my perspective, hearing people's opinions on it, hearing people's views and their experiences, and kind of being able to try and understand that. And I believe that by doing that, that's how we learn, that's how we evolve, that's how we again become more resilient, because it's a different experience.
Thank you for sharing that context with me and the listeners. So Lisa, I just want to say thank you for your generosity today. Thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge and your experiences with me, and also with the audience. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, in closing, I want to say thank you for listening to the KnolShare with Dr. Dave podcast. I invite you to come back for more insights and perspectives that may help you with discovering resiliently you. So if you want to connect with Lisa Jones at hello@headstrongtraining.co.uk. And that's hello@headstrongtraining.co.uk. KnolShare with Dr. Dave podcast is streamed on Spotify, Apple, Audible, and Google, and many other streaming platforms as well. I want to say thank you to Kiana Brow Hendrickson for dropping in music for this podcast. This podcast is copywritten 2022 by Dr. Dave Cornelius and KnolShare.org. Again, thank you for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode of Resiliently You as we continue to share our stories and experiences. I said, be well, and we will speak soon. What is the importance of belonging? And why do we all need to belong somewhere? It is built into our human nature. Learn how the powerful philosophy of Ubuntu helps to deliver a simple roadmap to building positive teams and relationships, improving engagement and performance. Get your copy of Belonging and Healing, Creating Awesomeness for Yourself and Others by Dr. Dave Cornelius on Amazon.com.
Let's talk about it. Talk. Let's go deep. We all have something to share. KnolShare with Dr. Dave.